30 days. That is the exact number separating 20 rounds tearing through the walls of Rihanna's Beverly Hills sanctuary and this woman standing in Parisian sunlight with her infant daughter pressed against her chest for every living soul on this planet to witness. And if you do not understand why that arithmetic alone should make you stop breathing for a second, then I need you to sit somewhere still and absorb every single word that follows. Because what unfolded on April 8th, 2026, on the cobblestone avenues of Paris, France, was not a celebrity sighting. It was not a photo opportunity. It was not a curated publicity stunt designed by a management team collecting a percentage. What Rihanna orchestrated yesterday was a full-spectrum declaration of maternal supremacy that obliterated every expectation the world had assigned to this family. And I am going to dismantle every hidden layer of this moment until you see exactly what I see, because nobody else is excavating this story the way we are about to right now. So anchor yourself, because this one carries genuine weight, and it runs deeper than anything the surface-level coverage is prepared to acknowledge. We are going to examine the timeline, the choreography, the fashion language, and the psychological warfare embedded in every single decision Rihanna made this week. Because when you see the full picture assembled, you will never look at a celebrity public appearance the same way again. Rocky Irish Mayors just stepped onto the global stage, 7 months old, the daughter of a Barbadian empire builder and one of the most aesthetically influential men to ever walk through the corridors of hip-hop culture. And her entrance was not whispered. It was thunderous. It was deliberate. It was architectural in its precision. And we need to trace the entire blueprint from the very first brick, because without that foundation, you cannot possibly comprehend why yesterday landed the way it did, and why I genuinely believe that what we witnessed is going to reverberate through the cultural record for years to come. This is not a story about a baby being photographed. This is a story about power, about protection, about a mother's refusal to allow the worst moment of her family's recent history to dictate the most beautiful one. Rewind to September 13th, 2025. Rihanna delivers her third child with ASAP Rocky, a daughter, their first girl after 2 sons, RZA and Riot. And the way this woman elected to inform 8 billion human beings of this arrival tells you absolutely everything about the fortress she had already begun constructing around this baby before the umbilical cord was severed. She posted one photograph on Instagram. One. Herself cradling this impossibly tiny newborn swaddled entirely in blush pink, eyes sealed shut in pure infant oblivion, resting against her mother like the outside world simply did not exist yet. Beside it, a second image, a pair of miniature pink boxing gloves threaded with satin ribbons the same shade of rose. That was the totality of the announcement. No press conference orchestrated by a publicist extracting 7 figures, no magazine cover negotiated behind oak doors in some midtown high-rise, no television exclusive with a rehearsed smile and a manufactured narrative shaped by a team of consultants. Just a mother, her daughter, and a caption that read, Rocky Irish Mayors, September 13th, 2025. Full stop. Nothing more was offered, because nothing more was owed. And those 2 images alone shattered 5 million likes in under 120 minutes. 2 hours, 5 million human beings pressing their thumb against a screen in collective recognition that something extraordinary had just entered this dimension. That velocity of response is not viral by ordinary metrics. That is cultural ignition on a planetary frequency that very few announcements in the history of social media have ever achieved. And then ASAP Rocky, a man who has built an entire identity around controlled emotional distance and the art of communicating maximum sentiment through minimum syllables, dropped 3 words into the comments section that sent every timeline into absolute freefall. My little ladies. 3 words, and the internet completely dissolved into collective tenderness. Fathers were emotional. Mothers were emotional. Strangers who had never met either of these people were emotional, because those 3 words contain something that no algorithm can manufacture and no publicist can script. which is the sound of a man who has been permanently altered by what he helped create. And I remember reading those two words over and over, thinking that this family, before the world even laid eyes on their daughter, had already established the tone, restraint, intention, devotion operating at a frequency that does not require volume to be felt across continents. Now I need you to understand what happened next, because this is where the architecture becomes genuinely unprecedented in the modern history of celebrity parenthood. From September 13th forward, Rocky Irish mares ceased to exist in the public record, completely, entirely, as though Rihanna had drawn a chalk circle around her daughter and told the entire observable universe that nobody was permitted to cross that perimeter under any circumstances whatsoever. October passed with 0 sightings, November passed identically, December folded into January and then February, and this child remained a phantom throughout every single one of those weeks. There were no paparazzi ambushes outside morning errands. There were no blurry telephoto captures through restaurant windows. There were no carefully leaked images from anonymous sources collecting an envelope from a tabloid editor. Absolute silence maintained at a level of discipline that borders on the extraordinary. 7 consecutive months of a newborn celebrity child being functionally invisible to a world that was desperate, profoundly desperate to lay eyes on her. And in an era where every infant born to anyone with a verified checkmark gets introduced to the public before the hospital discharge papers are even signed, do you understand the level of disciplined, almost militant intentionality that required? Rihanna did not simply choose privacy, she enforced it with an iron perimeter. She constructed a boundary around her daughter so impenetrable that the most aggressive media apparatus on the face of this earth could not breach it for more than half a year. That is not a parenting preference casually exercised. That is a strategic operation executed with the precision of somebody who understands exactly how the machinery of fame devours the people it claims to celebrate, and who refused categorically to feed her daughter into those gears. Think about how many celebrity parents in this era announce their children within days, sometimes hours of birth. Think about how many curate Instagram reveals and negotiate magazine exclusives before the infant can even focus its eyes on a face. Rihanna looked at that entire apparatus and said, "No, not on your timeline, on mine." And then she held that line for 7 months without a single fracture in the perimeter. Now, the closest anyone came to piercing that shield was January 2026, and even that requires enormous qualification because what surfaced was not a public appearance by any honest measure. Rihanna was photographed during a private retreat on the coastline of Barbados, her homeland, with Rocky and both boys. But the conditions under which those images materialized tell their own revealing story. She was on a yacht, surrounded by open water and every physical barrier imaginable between her daughter and public curiosity. Those photographs were not given. They were extracted by telephoto lenses operated from positions she never sanctioned and distances she never closed voluntarily. That was a mother existing in her native waters with her children who simply happened to fall within the orbital range of professional curiosity, shooting from considerable distance. And even those images, distant as they were, sent shockwaves through every entertainment outlet on the planet because the hunger to see this child had compounded over 5 months of absolute nothing. The fact that even a blurred, long-range glimpse of Rocky Irish generated that level of response should have told the world exactly how seismic the actual debut would be when it finally materialized. And Rihanna knew that. She understood the mathematics of anticipation better than anyone. An actual debut where the full dimension of this child could be witnessed in a public space, on solid terrain, in a city, breathing the same atmosphere as everyone else, witnessed at close range by ordinary citizens, that had never occurred, not once in 7 months, until Paris. And now I need you to absorb the seismic event that detonated roughly 30 days before Rihanna chose to walk those Parisian streets with her daughter. Because without this context, you are only seeing the surface of a moment that operates on about 15 different frequencies simultaneously. In March 2026, approximately 4 weeks before the Paris outing, an individual discharged 20 rounds from a firearm directly into the Beverly Hills residence, where Rihanna, ASAP Rocky, and their 3 children, including infant Rocky Irish, lived. 20. Not a stray bullet from a passing vehicle, not a single shot motivated by impulse or accident. 20 deliberate projectiles fired with apparent intent toward the precise area where this family was understood to reside. The rounds penetrated the walls of the structure. They compromised the integrity of the home itself. They punctured the Airstream trailer situated on the property. Law enforcement officials who responded to the scene described the fact that no family member sustained a physical wound as nothing short of miraculous. That is the word investigators chose to use, a miracle. And following that incident, this family had to evacuate their own home. They had to abandon the sanctuary Rihanna had poured years of earnings and emotional investment into constructing. They had to flee the space that was supposed to be the one coordinate on this entire planet where they could exist without armor, without vigilance, without the constant hum of awareness that fame imposes on every other square foot of their lives. So hold that reality in one hand. 20 rounds, evacuation, the violation of the single most sacred space a parent can offer a child, the destruction of the illusion that walls and addresses and security systems can guarantee peace. And in the other hand, hold what happened 30 days later. Paris, daylight, cobblestone streets alive with pedestrians and spring air. Rihanna walking with absolute composure, her 7-month-old daughter cradled against her body, fully visible to every lens and every eye within range. 30 days between someone attempting to annihilate this family's sense of safety and this mother introducing her most vulnerable child to the most photographed city on planet Earth. If that contrast does not land in your chest like a physical weight, I need you to recalibrate your understanding of what courage actually looks like when it is wearing the skin of a mother who has decided that fear does not get a seat at the table where her daughter's future is being composed. And I want you to truly marinate in what Rihanna communicated yesterday without opening her mouth even once. She said, through the language of action alone, that terror would not author her family's calendar. She said that no weapon discharged at her walls would determine when, where, or how her daughter meets the world. She declared, in the most visible way humanly possible, that Rocky Irish mayors would be introduced to civilization surrounded by art, by fashion, by culture, by the golden light of the most elegant city on earth, and not by the darkness that someone attempted to impose on their existence barely 4 weeks prior. That is not a celebrity making an appearance. That is a woman planting her flag in the ground and telling every watching eye that her daughter's story begins with beauty, and absolutely nothing else has permission to rewrite that opening chapter. And I need to be transparent with you right now, because I try to maintain composure when discussing these situations, but yesterday tested that composure in a genuine way. When those photographs surfaced of Rihanna standing in Paris with Rocky Irish, looking entirely at peace, looking like a woman who had not spent the previous month processing the trauma of having her home perforated by gunfire, I felt something shift. There was something about the juxtaposition, the sheer defiant boldness of this woman choosing Paris as the theater for her daughter's introduction to public life, while privately carrying the weight of what her family just survived, that transcended any definition of celebrity I have ever subscribed to. That was testimony. Living, breathing, walking testimony, dressed in designer fabric and illuminated by golden light of April sunlight, and carrying the most precious cargo she has ever been entrusted with. And I sat with that image for a long time, because it taught me something about the difference between surviving and expanding, between enduring a wound and choosing to grow larger in direct response to the blade. Because I thought about my own reflexes, honestly. When something disrupts my equilibrium, when something threatens the space I have built for myself, my instinct is compression. Close the doors, reduce the surface area. Wait for the tremor to pass. And there is nothing wrong with that instinct because it is rooted in self-preservation, and self-preservation is valid at every scale. But what Rihanna demonstrated is the alternative, that most of us do not have the constitution to execute. She took the tremor and converted it into propulsion. She used the energy of the attack not to retreat, but to accelerate forward into the most luminous, most visible, most joyful expression of her family's existence that she could possibly construct. And that conversion, that alchemy of transforming violence into beauty, is something I will carry with me for a very long time. Now pull back with me, because this Paris trip did not materialize overnight. The entire week preceding Rocky Irish's debut was its own carefully conducted symphony, and every single movement was a measure and a composition that Rihanna was directing from the podium. On April 4th, Rihanna and ASAP Rocky gathered with extended family for a private dinner at Sienna Restaurant. A table surrounded by people who love them, food prepared with intention, conversation that mends what violence fractures, unity after disruption, communion after violation. That was the opening note. Then on April 6th, Rihanna surfaced at the Jimmy Choo flagship store, wrapped entirely in black from her crown to her soles. And I need people to understand that when you overlay the context of what she endured barely a month earlier, that monochromatic ensemble was not a wardrobe selection. That was a woman suiting up. Black is the color of authority. It is the color of boundaries drawn with permanent ink. It is what you wear when you want the world to understand that the person standing before them has passed through something formidable and emerged not diminished but reinforced with new steel in her spine. She was not browsing handbags. She was reasserting dominion over her own narrative in a space that represents the pinnacle of luxury, and therefore the pinnacle of choice, and therefore the pinnacle of freedom, which is precisely what someone tried to steal from her family when those rounds came through the walls. And then came the crescendo. After the family dinner established stability, after the solo appearance demonstrated individual fortitude, after days of quietly reclaiming the chapters that violence attempted to rip from their story, Rihanna brought Rocky Irish into the open air. She placed her daughter in the theater of Paris and said to every camera, every journalist, every algorithm, "Here she is." That sequencing was not accidental. Stability first, then composure, then the culmination. She controlled the rhythm, she managed the anticipation, she selected the climax point, and she accomplished all of it while metabolizing the emotional residue of an attack that would have sent most people into complete withdrawal from public life for months, if not permanently. The level of composure required to execute that kind of sequential public strategy while privately processing that caliber of trauma is something that I do not think enough voices are crediting her for. And center ASAP Rocky in this conversation, because what this represents for him as a father demands its own space. This is a man who described his daughter as someone who seized absolute command of their household within 4 months, vocalizing before anyone expected it, giggling with a frequency that restructured the entire domestic ecosystem. He said that with the particular awe that only surfaces in a father rendered completely defenseless by his child. And now she has governed Paris. Every digital timeline, every entertainment vertical, every cultural conversation today. At 7 months, this infant walked into public consciousness and the internet reorganized around her. That is generational frequency announcing itself. The symbolism deserves its own chapter. RZA has been seen in Paris. Riot has been seen in Paris. Now, Rocky Irish. Every child born to this couple has taken a significant public step on Parisian soil. It reads like destiny authored it before any of them drew breath. Paris was always the canvas. This family was always the portrait. Every chapter circles back to this city, as though the coordinates were written in advance. Consider who these children are, the offspring of ASAP Rocky, who redefined existence at the intersection of music and visual identity. The children of Rihanna, who transcended singer, fashion architect, beauty mogul, and businesswoman to become one of the most formidable cultural organisms alive. These are inheritors of an empire spanning industries and continents. Each took their first meaningful public step in the same city. That is legacy sculpted in real time. But the tectonic layer demands acknowledgement. The world expected retreat after 20 rounds pierced her walls. High barriers, media darkness, silence. Instead, she delivered Paris in full daylight with her newborn daughter visible. That is a direct transmission to whoever pulled that trigger. You failed. You did not diminish this family. You did not compress their world into something smaller and more frightened. They are in Paris. Their daughter is meeting the sun. And the only thing those rounds accomplished was providing the contrast against which Rihanna's strength became visible to every person on this planet. For anyone who has experienced security being violated, Rihanna walking those streets with Rocky Irish is an instruction manual in refusing fear the authority to schedule your life. The instinct after that kind of event would be to contract. That is survival. But she selected expansion. She grew. She went to Paris. She presented her daughter to civilization. She inflated her presence in direct proportion to the force attempting to collapse it. That resilience is forged through years of navigating an industry that tried to define her, scrutiny that tried to diminish her, and a Barbadian childhood that taught her the only person authorized to determine the dimensions of your life is the one in the mirror. Fabric is vocabulary with Rihanna. The all-black visit spoke sovereignty, the dinner appearances exhaled warmth, and when she presented Rocky Irish, every fashion editor registered it. She does not select garments, she issues declarations. Introducing your daughter in Paris while the editorial world watches is an anointing. Rocky Irish was presented with coronation gravity. Rihanna was the hand placing the crown. The concealment timeline warrants a monument. September, total privacy. October through December, silence. January, distant Barbadian images. February, absence. March, 20 rounds. April, Paris with Rocky Irish for 8 billion people. 7 months of fortress concealment followed by the most audacious debut imaginable. The chasm between that invisibility in Paris functions as a cinematic final sequence where the protagonist steps through the last door carrying what she spent the entire narrative protecting. Except this is an inauguration, not a conclusion. Rocky Irish just entered the arena. I cannot conclude without the wider resonance from mothers, particularly black mothers navigating fame, scrutiny, and danger simultaneously. Rihanna modeled denying external forces the privilege of dictating how your child is presented. The press did not dictate this moment. The individual who fired those rounds did not delay it. Rihanna decided. The city, the date, the audience. For every mother who has felt circumstances composing chapters without consent, Rihanna demolished the old template. You choose the setting. You choose the timeline. You choose the narrative. No force receives permission to overrule maternal authority. Drop where you were when you discovered Rocky Irish mayors had materialized. I need to know whether the Paris element, this happening on these specific streets, struck you the way it struck me. Whether you feel the proximity to the shooting transforms this into one of the most profound displays of maternal fortitude this generation has witnessed. What happened was not spontaneous or coincidental. This was Rihanna functioning precisely as she always has, on her own schedule, with intentionality that renders strategists amateur. Leave your unfiltered response. If this is new, lock in, because we are chronicling every development from this Paris chapter. Additional analysis on security, fashion forensics, and cultural reverberations arrive shortly. Remain anchored. I will see every one of you in the next one. Stay blessed now.